The morning light barely filtered through the grey sky as Emma Carter pulled her coat tighter against her body. The bitter wind bit at her skin as she hurried down the cracked sidewalk of her worn-out neighborhood. Another day, another shift. Her feet ached before she even started work, but there was no time to complain. Her 6-year-old son, Noah, needed food on the table, and this job at the Astor estate, no matter how exhausting, was her lifeline. The Astors were the kind of rich Emma could barely comprehend. Their mansion was practically a castle, with tall iron gates, marble floors, and chandeliers the size of her entire apartment. Emma had been working as a maid there for just over 3 months, keeping her head down, avoiding trouble, and praying she wouldn't be fired. As she arrived at the back entrance, the house was already bustling with staff. The grandfather clock in the main hallway struck 6 as she hung her coat and tied on her apron. "Cutting it close," murmured Lena, another maid, giving Emma a pointed look as she passed. Emma forced a small smile, but didn't respond. She had no energy for gossip. Today she was assigned to clean the East Wing, a section of the mansion that only the most trusted staff were allowed into. Normally new maids weren't permitted there, but since another worker had called in sick, Emma was given the task. She didn't think much of it. Just another day scrubbing floors for people who would never even know her name, until she stepped into the private study of Eleanor Astor. The study, Emma had never seen a room like this before. The walls were lined with towering bookshelves, each one filled with rare, leather-bound books. A massive mahogany desk stood in the center of the room, covered in neatly stacked documents, a crystal whiskey decanter, and a single framed photograph. She worked quickly, dusting, polishing, and making sure every surface was spotless. She had just bent down to clean under the desk when her hand brushed against a hidden folder. Her heart skipped a beat. The folder was labeled, "Confidential Adoption Records." She knew she shouldn't look. She knew it could cost her job. But something about it pulled her in. With trembling fingers, she lifted the top page and read the first line. Adoptee's name, Emma Carter. Her breath caught in her throat. Her name, her birth date, her original birth certificate. She flipped through the pages faster now, panic rising in her chest. At the bottom of the document, written in black ink, was the name of her biological mother, Eleanor Astor, the billionaire matriarch, the woman who had given her away. Shock and betrayal. Emma stumbled backward, the room spinning. This had to be a mistake. Eleanor Astor, the woman who lived in unimaginable wealth, who owned a fleet of luxury cars, attended exclusive galas, and was worshipped by the media. She was Emma's mother, the very same woman who had abandoned her. Emma's breath grew unsteady as memories from her childhood rushed back. Foster homes, cold nights, families that never kept her for long, and all this time, her mother had been right here, living in a palace, never looking for her. The papers shook in her hands as her pulse pounded in her ears. Why? Why had Eleanor given her up? Why had she never tried to find her? Emma's stomach twisted with a mix of rage, confusion, and heartache. She had spent her whole life struggling, never knowing where she came from while her mother had been living in luxury. Did Eleanor know? Did she even care? Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but before she could process any of it, the confrontation. The door creaked open. Emma froze. Standing in the doorway was Eleanor Astor herself. She was even more intimidating in person. Tall, poised, with piercing blue eyes that could cut through steel. She wore an expensive silk robe, her silver blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Emma's heartbeat thundered in her chest. Eleanor's gaze fell to the adoption papers in Emma's hand. For a moment, time stood still. A strange expression flickered across Eleanor's face, something unreadable. Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then Eleanor spoke, her voice as sharp as a knife. "Who gave you permission to touch my things?" Emma swallowed hard. She had so many questions, but under Eleanor's cold stare, all her words died in her throat. Eleanor took a slow step forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "What exactly?" she continued, her tone calm but laced with something dangerous. "Do you think you're doing?" Emma's fingers clenched around the papers. She wanted to scream. She wanted to demand answers. But all she could do was stand there, trapped in Eleanor Astor's icy glare, her entire world shattering around her. Because in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. Eleanor recognized her. And for the first time, Emma realized she had never been a secret. Eleanor had always known. Emma stood frozen in Eleanor Astor's study, her hands gripping the adoption papers as if they were the only thing keeping her upright. Eleanor's icy blue eyes burned into hers, but Emma couldn't look away. She knew. The billionaire matriarch, her biological mother, had recognized her the moment their eyes met. Seconds stretched into an eternity before Eleanor finally spoke again. "You didn't answer me," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Who gave you permission to touch my things?" Emma's throat was dry. She wanted to say 100 things, scream, demand answers. Why did you abandon me? Did you ever look for me? But all that came out was a barely audible Eleanor stepped closer, her presence suffocating. "You were hired to clean, not to snoop through private documents." Emma's nails dug into the papers. Private? These weren't just random documents. This wasn't some misplaced receipt or forgotten note. This was her life, her past, everything that had been hidden from her. A rush of anger surged through her, overtaking the shock. I didn't mean to find this," she stammered. "But maybe if you hadn't buried it under piles of papers, I wouldn't have." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "That's not your concern." Emma let out a hollow laugh. "Not my concern. I grew up in foster homes. I spent my childhood wondering why I wasn't good enough to keep. And now you're telling me it's not my concern?" A flicker of something crossed Eleanor's face. Pain. Regret. It was gone before Emma could be sure. The older woman folded her arms, keeping her composed mask in place. "What do you expect me to say?" Emma's breath hitched. "I want the truth." Silence. Then Eleanor exhaled, slowly, deliberately. "Fine." She walked past Emma and sank into the leather chair behind the desk, resting her elbows on the polished surface. For a brief moment she looked tired, almost vulnerable, but only for a second. Then she straightened, back to being untouchable. "You were a mistake." The words hit like a slap. Emma's heart clenched. Eleanor didn't flinch. "I was 19. Too young. Too ambitious. Your father wasn't in the picture, and I had a life ahead of me. Keeping you would have disrupted everything." Emma's breath came shallow. "Disrupted everything," she repeated, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "So you just gave me away?" Eleanor's gaze was unrelenting. "It was the best option." Emma's hands curled into fists. "Best for who? Because I sure as hell don't remember it being the best for me." Eleanor didn't respond. Emma felt something inside her crack. The woman sitting in front of her wasn't some distant billionaire. She was the mother who had abandoned her like she was nothing, and now she was acting like it had been some simple transaction. A wave of nausea rolled over her. "I need to go," she whispered, turning toward the door. "Emma." Her name stopped her in her tracks. Eleanor rarely called anyone by their first names. Even the household staff were addressed by their titles. But now, as her mother said her name, there was something different in her voice. Emma turned back, expecting more indifference. Instead, she saw hesitation. It was brief, gone before she could fully register it, but it had been there. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. "Do not speak of this to anyone." Emma's fingers trembled as she gripped the door handle. "Or what? You'll fire me?" Eleanor tilted her head. "That depends." Emma narrowed her eyes. "On what?" A small smirk played at the corner of Eleanor's lips. "On whether or not you can keep yourself under control." The weight of the truth. Emma stormed out of the study, her pulse hammering in her ears. The hallways of the mansion felt smaller now, suffocating. She needed to breathe, to think. But there was nowhere to escape. As she reached the back exit, someone called her name. "Emma?" She turned to see Lena, the other maid, eyeing her suspiciously. "Are you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." Emma forced a shaky smile. "Just a long morning." Lena frowned. "You sure? Mrs. Astor isn't an easy one." That was an understatement. Emma nodded quickly. "I'm fine." Lena didn't look convinced, but she didn't press further. "Well, get out of here before Mrs. Holloway finds something else for you to do." Emma barely heard her as she stepped outside, the cold air hitting her face like a slap. She couldn't go home yet. Not like this. Not when her entire world had just shifted. The unexpected visitor hours passed before she finally walked through the door of her tiny apartment. Noah ran up to her, arms outstretched. "Mommy!" The tension in Emma's chest loosened slightly as she scooped him up. "Hey, sweetheart," he giggled. "Missed you." She forced a smile. "Missed you too, baby." As she set him down, a knock on the door startled her. Her stomach twisted. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. Her blood ran cold. Eleanor Astor stood on her doorstep. Emma's hands shook as she unlocked the door and pulled it open. Eleanor looked out of place in the run-down hallway, her presence too grand, too sharp against the peeling paint and flickering light bulb. Emma's throat went dry. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor didn't answer immediately. She glanced around, her gaze briefly landing on Noah, who clutched his teddy bear and watched the stranger with wide, curious eyes. Something unreadable flashed across Eleanor's face. Then she turned back to Emma. "We need to talk," she said simply. Emma crossed her arms. "I don't think we do." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "You don't have a choice." Emma stiffened. "I always have a choice." Eleanor exhaled. "Then make the smart one." Emma hesitated. There was something different about Eleanor now. Less composed, more unsettled. Emma glanced at Noah. He was watching them, his little brow furrowed. She sighed, stepping outside and pulling the door shut behind her. "Fine," she muttered. "Talk." Eleanor hesitated, then said, "You deserve to know the whole truth." Emma's heart stopped. There was more. She had thought finding out Eleanor was her mother was the end of the mystery. But now, standing in the dim hallway, she realized something. She had only uncovered the beginning. The hallway of Emma's tiny apartment building felt smaller, more suffocating, with Eleanor Astor standing there, the woman who had abandoned her, the billionaire who had watched her suffer from a distance. And now she wanted to talk? Emma's pulse pounded in her ears as she crossed her arms. "You had all these years to talk. Why now?" Eleanor's expression remained unreadable. "Because you found out," Emma scoffed. "That's not an answer." Eleanor exhaled sharply. "Let's go somewhere private." Emma's stomach twisted. "This is my home." Eleanor's gaze flickered toward the door, where Noah was peeking out, his small fingers gripping the edge of the frame. Emma's instinct kicked in immediately. She turned, blocking his view. "Go inside, sweetheart." Noah hesitated. "Who's that?" Emma forced a smile. "Just someone Mummy works with." "Go play, okay?" Noah stared at Eleanor for a second longer before nodding and running back inside. Emma turned back, her voice sharp. "Say what you need to say and leave." Eleanor hesitated for the first time since arriving. "I didn't know where you ended up." Emma narrowed her eyes. "You expect me to believe that?" "I didn't." Eleanor's voice was clipped, controlled. "Your adoption records were sealed. I made sure of it." Emma's stomach dropped. "She made sure of it? So what?" Emma snapped. "You wanted to get rid of me so badly that you erased every trace of me." Eleanor flinched, just slightly, but Emma caught it. She wanted to hate her, needed to hate her. But for the first time, doubt crept in. If Eleanor had truly wanted to forget her, why was she here now? Emma swallowed. "What happened?" Eleanor hesitated. "It's complicated." Emma folded her arms. "Try me." Eleanor glanced down the hallway before sighing. "Fine, but not here." Emma clenched her jaw. Every fiber of her being screamed not to go, not to let this woman drag her into something she wasn't prepared for. But deep down, she knew there was no going back now. She grabbed her coat and followed Eleanor outside. The drive. Eleanor's sleek black car was waiting outside, the kind of luxury vehicle Emma had only seen in magazines. A driver in a suit held the door open, his gaze professionally blank. Emma hesitated before sliding into the leather seat, tension crackling in the air. As they pulled away from the curb, Eleanor finally spoke. "I never wanted to give you up." Emma's heart stuttered. But before she could react, Eleanor continued. "My parents forced me." Emma blinked. "Your parents?" Eleanor's jaw tightened. The Astors had an image to uphold. A teenage pregnancy wasn't part of it. Emma clenched her fists. "So you just listened to them?" Eleanor turned to face her, her gaze colder now. "You think I had a choice?" Emma's throat dried. She had always imagined that Eleanor had abandoned her without a second thought, but now hearing this, her anger wavered. But before she could process it, Eleanor said something that shattered everything. The major plot twist. "They told me you died." Emma's blood ran cold. "What?" she whispered. Eleanor's expression remained controlled, but Emma could see the cracks forming. "They told me the baby, you, didn't make it." Emma shook her head. No, that doesn't make sense." If you thought I was dead, why are my adoption records in your house? Eleanor's fingers tightened around her lap. Because I found out the truth too late. Emma's heart pounded. How late? Eleanor turned away, staring out the window. Years. Decades. Emma felt the world tilt. Her mother had been lied to, just like she had been. The car ride stretched into silence, thick with unsaid words. Eleanor inhaled deeply. When I was 19, my father arranged for everything. I never saw the birth certificate, never held you. One moment I was pregnant, the next they told me you were gone. Emma pressed her nails into her palms. And you believed them? Eleanor's gaze turned sharp. Wouldn't you? Emma opened her mouth but closed it again. Would she? If someone told her Noah was gone, if they had proof, what would she have done? Eleanor continued, her voice lower now. I tried to move on, built my empire, focused on business. But I never forgot. Emma's pulse thumped in her ears. Eleanor had looked for her. She had never known. Emma swallowed hard. When did you find out? Eleanor hesitated. Then, quietly, a year ago. Emma's hands shook. A year? You've known for a year? Eleanor didn't flinch. Yes. Emma let out a humorless laugh. And you didn't think to find me? I did. Eleanor met her gaze. That's why you got the job. Emma's stomach dropped. She had thought it was a coincidence, getting hired at the estate. It wasn't. You planned this? She whispered. Eleanor exhaled. I wanted to see you, know you, but I didn't know how to tell you. Emma's head spun. This whole time she had thought she was just some maid in a rich woman's house, but she had been watched, chosen. Her life had been a lie. Again. Emma turned to the window, forcing the lump in her throat down. This was too much. But before she could process it, the car slowed. She looked up, startled. They weren't at the Astor mansion. They were at a cemetery. Emma's pulse spiked. What is this? Eleanor didn't answer. She simply stepped out of the car. Emma hesitated before following. The air was cold, the sky overcast. Eleanor led her down the stone path, past rows of graves, before stopping in front of a single marble headstone. Emma's breath hitched. Her name was on it. Emma Astor, beloved daughter. She stumbled back. You had a grave made for me. Eleanor's voice was hoarse. I mourned you for years. Emma couldn't breathe. She had spent her entire life thinking she was unwanted, but here was proof that someone had grieved her. She turned to Eleanor, her chest tight. Why bring me here? Eleanor's expression softened for the first time. To show you the truth. Emma swallowed hard, emotions crashing over her. She had spent years resenting this woman, but now, standing in front of her own grave, she realized maybe they had both been victims of the same lie. Emma stood in front of her own grave, her chest tightening as the weight of Eleanor's words settled over her. For years she had lived believing she was unwanted, unloved, forgotten. But now, staring at the marble headstone bearing her name, she realized something terrifying. She had been erased. She turned to Eleanor, her voice hoarse. You really thought I was dead? Eleanor's face remained unreadable, but there was something raw behind her usually composed features. For most of my life, yes. Emma swallowed hard. And now? Eleanor's gaze met hers. Now, I'm trying to make things right. The wind howled through the cemetery, carrying with it a painful silence. Emma let out a bitter laugh. You can't fix this. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Maybe not, but I can give you what was stolen from you. Emma turned away, her mind spinning. Her entire world had been shattered twice in one day, and yet a small part of her wanted to believe Eleanor, wanted to believe that she wasn't just some disposable mistake. But trust didn't come easy, not after everything. Eleanor reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. I want you to read this. Emma hesitated before taking it. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, pulling out a neatly folded letter. Her breath hitched. It was handwritten by Eleanor. Emma's hands tightened around the paper as she read, To the daughter I never got to hold. There are things in this world I cannot change, no matter how much I wish I could. I was young, foolish, and too weak to fight the battles I should have fought for you. For that I will never forgive myself. I have spent years searching for the truth. When I found it, it destroyed me, because while I was building my empire, you were growing up without me. I cannot undo the past. But if you will let me, I want to be part of your future. You may never forgive me, and I would understand, but I will never stop trying. Eleanor. Emma's throat tightened. For the first time, she saw not the ruthless billionaire, but the mother who had mourned her. The mother who had been lied to just as she had. She looked up at Eleanor, her heart pounding. Why are you doing this now? Eleanor inhaled deeply. Because I can't live with myself if I don't. Emma clenched the letter, emotions clawing at her chest. She could walk away, pretend this never happened, continue hating Eleanor, or she could take a chance, a terrifying, heartbreaking chance. Emma closed her eyes, and then in a whisper she said, I don't know if I can forgive you. Eleanor exhaled, something almost like relief in her eyes. That's fair. Emma looked away, her voice barely audible. But I don't want to hate you either. Eleanor's lips parted slightly, as if she hadn't expected that. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eleanor did something Emma never imagined she would. She reached out, hesitant, slow. Emma stared at the outstretched hand, the hand that had let her go all those years ago, and for the first time in her life, she took it. In the weeks that followed, Emma's life shifted in ways she never expected. Eleanor didn't try to push her, didn't try to force a relationship. Instead, she waited for Emma to come to her. And slowly, Emma did. It started with small things, coffee meetings, short conversations, guarded exchanges. Then one evening, Eleanor showed up with a gift. Emma frowned as she opened the box. What is this? Inside was a set of keys. Eleanor met her gaze. A new home. Emma stiffened. I don't need your money. Eleanor's expression softened. It's not about money. It's about giving you the security you should have always had. Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to reject it, but Noah deserved better. And for the first time, Emma realized accepting help didn't mean she was weak. She nodded. Okay. Eleanor exhaled, almost like she had been holding her breath. Okay. And just like that, something shifted between them. As Emma settled into her new home, another unexpected part of her life changed. It started with Liam. Liam was a single father she had met at Noah's school, always there for pickup, always kind. He had been a steady presence during the chaos of her discovery. One evening, as they watched their kids play together, Liam turned to her. You've been different lately, he said. Lighter. Emma hesitated. A lot has changed. Liam studied her. Is that a good thing? Emma thought about it, about the pain, the confusion, the anger, but also about the healing, the new beginnings. She smiled softly. Yeah, I think it is. Liam reached for her hand, squeezing gently. And for the first time in a long time, Emma let herself believe that happiness wasn't just for other people, that she could have it too. One evening, as she tucked Noah into bed, he blinked up at her sleepily. Mommy? She smoothed his hair back. Yeah, sweetheart. Are we happy now? Emma's chest ached. She had spent years surviving, fighting, struggling, but now, for the first time, she didn't have to fight alone. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. Yeah, baby, we are. As she stepped out onto the balcony, the city lights stretching before her, Emma took a deep breath. Her past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She had found family. She had found love. And maybe, just maybe, she had finally found herself.